My son thought he was clever when he wrapped that package in black electrical tape and buried it deep in my fishing tackle box. He figured his old man, just a washed-up retired engineer with trembling hands and fading eyesight, would never notice. But what he didn't know was that I caught his reflection in the garage window. For 40 years at Boeing, my job was finding microscopic cracks in aircraft wings before they turned into disasters. And right then, I spotted the biggest crack of all, in my own family. I didn't turn around. I didn't shout. I let him think he'd gotten away with it. I waited until he went inside for a beer, then I opened that package. What I found wasn't just a betrayal. It was a death sentence wrapped up as a son's mistake. I made a choice in that garage that would shatter everything. 30 minutes later on Interstate 5, I watched his entire world explode in my rearview mirror. Please subscribe and like this video and listen to my story till the end and let me know which city you're listening from. That way, I can see how far my story has traveled. But before I explain how I dismantled my own son's trap, you need to understand how we got here. My name is Marcus Hartley. I'm 72 years old. For the past decade, ever since my wife Catherine died, I've lived alone in a 4-bedroom house overlooking Puget Sound in Seattle. It's a house built on memories, paid for with overtime shifts and holidays I never got to take. Apparently, it's also the reason my son despises me. My son Jason is 38. He's a real estate agent who drives a car he can't afford and wears suits that cost more than my first vehicle. For 6 months straight, he'd been pressuring me to go on a fishing trip. Just the two of us, Dad. Like the old days, he'd say. And God, I wanted to believe him. When you reach my age, the silence in empty hallways gets deafening. You start making excuses for people. You tell yourself maybe those missed birthdays and unreturned calls were just because they were busy. So I said yes. I spent 3 whole days preparing my gear. I oiled every reel. I organized the lures. I wanted everything perfect. That Saturday morning, the Seattle sky hung heavy and gray. Rain spat against the metal roof of my garage. The air reeked of wet pine and gasoline. I stood at my workbench, tightening the drag on my favorite Shimano reel when I saw it, movement in the reflection of the garage door windows. Jason wasn't loading the cooler like he'd said. He was crouching by my pile of gear, his hand moving quick and nervous as he slipped something into the bottom compartment of my large tackle box. He glanced over his shoulder at my back. I kept my rhythm steady. Polish. Wipe. Turn. I didn't flinch. An engineer doesn't panic when he sees a red warning light. He assesses the damage first. "Hey, Dad," Jason called out, his voice too high, too cheerful. "I'm gonna run inside and grab a 6-pack. We should celebrate, right?" "Sure thing, son," I said calmly. It was the same voice I used when telling a project manager his bridge design would collapse without more support beams. The moment the door clicked shut, I moved. My knees don't allow running anymore, but I moved with purpose. Straight to the tackle box. I unlatched the bottom drawer. Underneath tangled fishing line and rusty hooks, there it was, a brick-shaped package wrapped tight in thick black electrical tape. Heavy. Dense. My heart hammered against my ribs, a chaotic rhythm dangerous for a man with a pacemaker. I peeled back a corner of the tape. My breath caught. Inside was a vacuum-sealed bag filled with blue pills. Hundreds of them. Small, round, stamped with an M and a 30. I watched the news. I know what fentanyl looks like. This was enough to kill half the neighborhood. But that wasn't all. Wrapped in an oily rag beside the pills was cold steel. A handgun. I pulled it out, a polymer 80. A ghost gun. No serial number. Untraceable. I stared at those items in my shaking hands, and the pieces slammed together so hard it made me dizzy. This wasn't my son hiding his stash. This was a setup. If we got pulled over and they found this in my box, in my truck, I'd be finished. A 72-year-old man caught with a ghost gun and trafficking weight of fentanyl? I'd die in prison. And Jason, he's my only heir. With me out of the way, declared incompetent or incarcerated, he'd get power of attorney. He'd get the house. He'd get the Boeing pension. He'd get the $2 million in my retirement fund that he's been sniffing around for years. I looked at the door leading into the house. Maybe 2 minutes before he came back. I could have flushed the pills. Could have thrown the gun in the trash. Could have confronted him right there, asked him how he could do this to the man who taught him to tie his shoes. But something in me snapped. The father in me wanted to cry. The engineer in me knew the structure had failed. This bridge couldn't be saved. It had to be demolished. I looked around the garage. I needed a counterweight. I grabbed a heavy lead diving weight from the shelf, about 3 pounds, roughly the same heft as the gun and drugs. I wrapped it quickly in a shop rag and stuffed it into the bottom of my tackle box, right where he'd put the package. Covered it with fishing line. Then I took the package, the drugs and the gun, and walked over to Jason's SUV. The trunk was open. He'd already loaded his bags. Under the floor mat in the trunk, there's a compartment for the spare tire and jack. I lifted the mat. Plenty of space in the rim of the spare tire. I wedged that black package in there deep, right next to the tire iron. Smoothed the mat back down. I was back at my workbench, wiping down a lure, when the door opened. "Got M," Jason announced, walking in with the beer. He looked at me, scanning my face for any sign that I knew. I gave him nothing. The same stoic face I wore at Catherine's funeral. "Ready to hit the road?" I asked. "Yeah, let's do it," he said, eyeing my tackle box. "You got everything in there, Dad? Looks heavy." "Just the essentials," I said. "We should take 2 cars," Jason suggested. And I knew this was part of the plan. My truck's pretty full with camping gear, and you like your own climate control. Plus, if we want to come back at different times, we'll have flexibility. Flimsy lie. We were going to the same cabin for the same amount of time. He wanted 2 cars so when I got pulled over, he wouldn't be in the vehicle with the contraband. He wanted to be the grieving son following behind, watching his senile father get arrested. "Sounds logical," I said. "I'll follow you." We rolled up the garage doors. Rain coming down harder now, a relentless Seattle drizzle that soaks into your bones. Jason climbed into his SUV. I climbed into my 10-year-old Ford F-150. He rolled down his window as he backed out. "Hey, Dad," he shouted over the rain. "Drive safe, okay? I heard on the radio the state troopers are out in force today. Speed traps everywhere." Setting the stage. He'd probably already made the anonymous call, warning me so he could sound like a concerned son later. "Thanks, son," I said. "You drive safe too. You never know what you might be carrying." He didn't catch the double meaning. Just flashed that winning smile, the smile of a shark in a suit, and pulled out. I waited for him to turn the corner. Then I pulled out my phone. I didn't call the police. Not yet. I called a number I hadn't dialed in 20 years, a buddy of mine from the old days, a man named Patterson who used to work security and now had friends in highway patrol. "Just need you to keep an eye out," I told Patterson. "My son's driving a black SUV, license plate Charlie Sierra 749. I think he might be driving impaired. Acting erratic. I'm worried he's gonna hurt someone." Wasn't a lie. He was going to hurt someone. He was trying to destroy me. I put the truck in gear and followed my son onto the highway. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I wasn't angry anymore. I was cold. Ice cold. I watched his taillights ahead, glowing red in the mist. I remembered teaching him how to drive on this very road. The day he was born. His graduation. And I realized, the boy I raised was gone. The man in that car ahead was a stranger. A stranger who'd just declared war on his own father. "Well, Jason," I whispered to the empty cab. "You wanted a war. You just picked a fight with the wrong veteran." We merged onto Interstate 5. Traffic was moderate. I stayed 3 car lengths behind. Watched him change lanes aggressively, cutting off a minivan. He was anxious. Probably checking his rear view every 5 seconds, waiting for flashing lights to appear behind me. Waiting for the show to start. He didn't have to wait long. About 10 miles out, near the exit for Federal Way, I saw them, 2 highway patrol cruisers sitting in the median. As soon as we passed, they pulled out. My heart rate spiked. This was the moment. If I'd missed anything, if he'd hidden something else I didn't find, my life was over. The cruisers sped up, bypassing other cars, coming up fast in the left lane. Jason slowed down. I could see his brake lights tapping. He expected them to tuck in behind my truck. But they didn't. The first cruiser shot past me. Then the second. I watched Jason's brake lights flare bright red. He must have been confused. Why were they passing the target? The lead cruiser swerved right in front of Jason and slammed on the brakes, forcing him to slow. The second pulled up on his bumper, lights flashing blue and red, blinding in the gray daylight. The siren wailed. They were pulling him over. I put on my turn signal and pulled onto the shoulder about 50 yards behind them. I was the concerned father, after all. I had to see this. Through my windshield, I watched Jason slam his hands on his steering wheel. I could see him shouting. He rolled down his window as the officer approached. I cracked mine just enough to hear. "Do you know why I pulled you over?" the officer asked. "No," Jason yelled. "You guys made a mistake. You want the truck behind me. My dad, he's confused. He's got." "Sir, step out of the vehicle," the officer ordered, hand resting on his holster. "We have a report of erratic driving and probable cause to search this vehicle." Jason stepped out. In his expensive North Face jacket, he looked small against the towering trooper. He looked back at me. Our eyes met through the rain and distance. Expecting me to be confused. Expecting me to run to his defense. I just sat there. Took a sip of my coffee. And for the first time in months, I smiled. Not a happy smile, the satisfied smile of an engineer who just watched a faulty structure collapse exactly where he calculated it would. Open the trunk, the officer commanded. Jason's face went pale. Started shaking his head. No, you don't understand. There's nothing in there. Just fishing gear. Check the truck. Check the old man's truck. The officer spun Jason around, pushed him against the hood. Another officer opened the trunk, started pulling out bags. Then lifted the floor mat. I couldn't see the package from where I sat, but I saw the officer's body language change. He stiffened. Pulled his radio to his shoulder. Drew his weapon, pointing it at the ground, backing away. Back up. Need backup now. We have a weapon and large quantity of narcotics. Jason screamed. A sound I'll never forget, terror mixed with rage. That's not mine. He put it there. He put it there. He pointed a shaking finger at me. The officer looked at me. I stepped out slowly, leaning heavily on my cane, a prop I didn't really need, but it helped the image. I shuffled toward them with the slow, confused movements of a concerned senior citizen. Officer, I called out, voice trembling just enough. Is everything okay? Is my son okay? Step back, sir, the officer yelled. Dad, tell them. Jason shrieked. Tell them you did this. I looked at the officer, bewildered. I don't understand. We were just going fishing. He's been under a lot of stress with his debts. Did he do something foolish? The officer looked at Jason, a man in his 30s screaming like a lunatic, accusing his elderly, crippled father of planting a ghost gun and fentanyl. Then he looked at me. Retired Boeing engineer. Clean record. Face full of worry. Cuff him, the officer said. As they slammed the silver bracelets onto Jason's wrists, I realized this was only the beginning. That package wasn't just drugs and a gun. It was a thread. And as the police pulled that thread, the whole sweater of lies my family had knitted was about to unravel. But I had no idea just how ugly the truth underneath really was. When I pulled my Ford F-150 back onto that gravel shoulder, the world became nothing but red and blue strobe lights reflecting off wet pavement. 3 state trooper vehicles, not one. They weren't taking chances. Whoever called in this tip described me as armed and dangerous. I knew exactly who made that call. I could see Jason's black SUV pulled over about 50 yards behind the police blockade, hazard lights blinking through the drizzle. He wanted a front row seat to my destruction. Wanted to see his father dragged from the truck, face pressed against asphalt, humiliated and broken. It was the only way to validate the narrative he'd been spinning, that I was a senile, volatile old man who needed to be put away. Officer! I shouted over passing traffic as a young trooper approached, hand resting on his holster. I'm not armed. My hands are right here. Step out of the vehicle slowly, sir. I opened the door, stepped out, leaning heavily on my cane. Made sure to look smaller than my 6-foot frame. Hunched my shoulders. Let my hand tremble reaching for the doorframe. I was playing the part my son had written for me, the confused, frail senior citizen. Turn around, face the vehicle. I complied. Felt his hands patting me down, checking for the weapon Jason said I had. He found nothing but a wallet, pack of gum, and a handkerchief. Where's the weapon, sir? We received a credible tip you're transporting a firearm and large quantity of narcotics. I looked at him with wide, bewildered eyes. Officer, there must be a mistake. I'm just going fishing. I'm a retired engineer. Never broken a law in my life. Search the vehicle, the lead officer shouted. I stood in the rain, water dripping off my hat, watching them tear through my truck. Pulled out sleeping bags. Opened the glove box. Looked under seats. Then the moment of truth. The officer reached for the tackle box in the back seat, the same box Jason had tampered with 40 minutes ago. My heart hammered. This was the variable I couldn't control. If I'd missed anything, this was the end. He popped the latch. Opened the trays. Dug through lures and tangled lines. Reached into the bottom compartment. I held my breath. He pulled out the heavy object wrapped in the shop rag. What's this? Unwrapped it. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Just the lead diving weight I'd swapped in. It's a sinker weight, officer, I said steadily. For deep water fishing. He weighed it in his hand, looked at it suspiciously, tossed it back into the box. Searched the cab one last time, frustration growing on his face. No pills. No ghost gun. Nothing illegal. Just the mundane belongings of an old man going on a trip. The lead trooper signaled his team. Clear. Nothing here. He turned to me, posture relaxing. Looked at my gray hair, my cane, the confusion on my face. The aggression drained out, replaced by embarrassment. Sir, I apologize. We take these calls seriously, but it appears we were given false information. You're free to go. Thank you, officer. I wiped rain from my glasses. I suppose someone played a cruel prank. Just as he handed back my license, I heard running footsteps on gravel. Dad. Dad, are you okay? Jason. Running up from his car, breathless, eyes wide with feigned panic. But as he got closer, I saw the real emotion flickering behind the act. He was scanning the scene, looking for handcuffs, looking for the evidence bag. When he saw me standing free, his face fell. The disappointment was so naked, so raw, it felt like a physical blow. He actually wanted me to be a criminal. Jason, thank goodness, I said, playing along. These officers thought I had drugs. Can you believe it? Jason stared at the tackle box sitting open on the tailgate, empty of the contraband he'd planted. Eyes darting around frantically. But, did you check everything? He stammered at the officer. My dad gets confused sometimes. Picks things up and doesn't know what they are. You should check again. Under the seats. The spare tire. The officer looked at Jason, saw a man in his late 30s, sweating in the cool rain, pupils dilated, trying to direct a police search against his own father. Not a good look. We did a thorough search, sir. Your father is clean. No. That's impossible. Jason's voice cracked. It has to be there. I mean. He stopped himself, realizing he almost admitted he knew what was in the box. But he was too agitated to stop completely. Vibrating with nervous energy. Sir, are you okay? The officer asked, stepping toward Jason. I'm fine. Just worried about my dad. Jason snapped, waving his hand dismissively. That was his mistake. When he waved, the wind shifted. Carried a scent I knew well, sweet, skunky odor of high-grade marijuana. Jason had smoked on the drive to calm his nerves, assuming he was just a spectator. The officer's nose twitched. Exchanged a glance with his partner. Sir, have you been smoking today? What? No. I mean, maybe a cigarette? Smells like cannabis, sir. And you're operating a motor vehicle. This is ridiculous. Jason laughed, high-pitched, nervous. My dad's the one you stopped. Why are you hassling me? Because I can smell it on you. And given we just had a tip about narcotics transport and you're traveling together, I'm gonna need to check your vehicle too. My stomach churned. I knew what was coming. Almost wanted to look away. But I couldn't. I had to witness this. No, you can't search my car. Jason shouted, face turning red. I don't consent. I'm afraid I have probable cause. The officer motioned to the K-09 unit. Bring the dog. The German Shepherd trotted over, alert and beautiful. The handler led him around my truck first. Nothing. Then toward Jason's black SUV. Jason stood frozen, hands clenching at his sides. Looked at me, eyes pleading for me to intervene. But I just leaned on my cane and watched. I was the observer now. The engineer watching the bridge take the load. The dog reached the rear of the SUV. Sniffed the bumper. Sniffed the trunk seam. Then he sat down. Barked once, loud and sharp. The signal was undeniable. Open the trunk. Jason didn't move. Paralyzed. The officer took the keys from Jason's shaking hand, popped the hatch. Moved the cooler. Moved the duffel bags. Then lifted the floor mat. I saw the officer's flashlight beam hit the black electrical tape. Saw him stiffen. Reached in, pulled out the package, the same one I'd held in my garage 45 minutes ago. Placed it on the patrol car hood. Took out a knife, slit the tape. Blue pill spilled into the evidence bag, bright and lethal against the gray sky. Then came the gun, dull metal of the ghost gun glinting in rain. Jason let out a sound half scream, half sob. No. That's not mine. That's his. He put it there. He's setting me up. The officer looked at Jason with pure disgust. A young man caught red-handed with a felony amount of narcotics and illegal firearm, trying to blame his 72-year-old father who'd just been cleared. Turn around. Hands behind your back. You don't understand. He's crazy. He's senile. He must have moved it. The click of handcuffs was the loudest sound on that highway. I watched my son shoved against his expensive car. Watched him crying, snot running down his face, shouting obscenities at me. Called me a bastard. A snake. Everything except Dad. The lead officer walked over. Looked tired. I'm sorry you had to see this, Mr. Hartley. Looks like your son has serious trouble. The drugs, the weapon, he's looking at mandatory time. I looked at the officer. For the first time, I didn't have to act. The tears welling in my eyes were real. Not for Jason, the man who tried to frame me. For the little boy I used to carry on my shoulders. The boy who asked me to check under his bed for monsters. I'd protected him from monsters his whole life. Never realized that one day he'd become the monster, and I'd be the one who had to trap him. Is there anything I can do? I asked quietly. You can go home, sir. We'll handle this. We'll need a statement later, but for now, just go home. I nodded. Watched as they shoved Jason into the back of the cruiser, still screaming, face pressed against glass, eyes locked on mine with hatred that chilled my blood. I turned, walked back to my truck. Legs felt heavier than they had in years. Climbed into the cab, shut the door, cutting off the noise of rain and sirens. Sat there gripping the wheel, staring at the empty road ahead. I'd won. The trap was sprung. The threat neutralized. By all engineering standards, the operation was a success. But as I put the truck in gear and pulled away, leaving my son in state custody, I felt a hollow ache in my chest that no amount of logic could fix. I'd saved my life. But I'd lost my son. And the worst part? I knew this was only the beginning. Jason was cornered, but he wasn't finished. And neither was his wife. Stephanie was still out there, and she was the one pulling the strings. The war had just begun. Have you ever had to choose between protecting yourself and protecting family? Drop a comment and let me know. And if you're still listening, you need to hear what happened when I got home, because Stephanie had her own plan, and it was darker than anything I could have imagined. The silence in my house that night was heavy enough to crush a man. I sat in my leather armchair facing the driveway, all lights off. Rain hadn't stopped since the highway incident. Drummed against the window pane, a relentless rhythm matching the throbbing in my temples. I was waiting. I knew they'd come. Stephanie isn't the type to let her husband rot in a holding cell if she can buy him out. She has connections. Or rather, she knows which credit cards to max out to hire the kind of lawyer who plays golf with the district attorney. Around 2 a.m, headlights swept across my ceiling. Heavy thud of car doors. Beep of an alarm system. I didn't get up. Gripped the armrests, knuckles white, preparing for the performance I was about to witness. I knew exactly what was coming. I'd run the simulation in my head a dozen times. They'd play victim. Play the desperation card. Try to make me feel guilty for being the one who caught them. The front door opened. Stephanie's voice first, sharp, whispering instructions. Then shuffle of feet. I reached out, clicked on the table lamp. Sudden yellow light caught them like deer in headlights. Jason looked terrible. Expensive suit rumpled, tie missing, eyes red and swollen. Stephanie stood beside him, hand gripping his arm, face a mask of fierce protective anger. But the moment she saw me, the mask shifted. Softened into something that looked like concern. I knew better. It was the look of a predator assessing its prey's weakness. Dad, Jason choked out, collapsing onto the sofa, burying his face in his hands. I stayed silent. Let the silence stretch, forcing them to fill it. In engineering, we call this a stress test. You apply pressure and see where the cracks appear. I'm so sorry, Marcus, Stephanie said, stepping forward, voice trembling but eyes dry. It's been a nightmare. We barely got him out. The bail was astronomical. I looked at my son. Look at me, Jason. He lifted his head. Looked like a child who'd broken a window, not a man who'd tried to plant a felony on his father. Why? I asked. Just one word. Simple. Direct. He slid off the sofa, fell to his knees on the rug, theatrical gesture, must have learned from movies. It wasn't what you think, Dad, he sobbed. I swear. I didn't mean to hurt you. Those pills, that gun, they weren't mine. Not really. Then whose were they? I owe money, Dad. Bad money to bad people. Words rushed out, stumbling over each other. I made some investments, crypto. Thought it was a sure thing. Thought I could double our savings, buy Stephanie that house she wanted. But the market crashed. It all disappeared overnight. I tried to win it back gambling online, but just dug the hole deeper. He paused, waiting for sympathy. I gave him none. They came to me yesterday. These guys, they're animals. Said I had to hold a package for them. Just a few days. Said if I didn't, they'd hurt Stephanie. They'd hurt Connor. He looked up, eyes pleading. I was terrified, Dad. I was gonna throw it away. Swear I was taking it to the river to dump it. But I saw their car parked down the street this morning. Thought they were watching. I panicked. Thought if I put it in your truck just for the drive, they wouldn't suspect you. They know my car. Don't know yours. I was gonna take it out soon as we got to the cabin. I was trying to protect you. I listened to his story. It was constructed well, I'll give him that. Elements of truth mixed with convenient lies. The debt was likely real. The fear was real. But the part about protecting me? That was the load-bearing wall that couldn't support the weight. If he wanted to protect me, he wouldn't have hidden a ghost gun in my tackle box. He would have asked for help. I looked at Stephanie. She was nodding along, playing supportive wife. He's telling the truth, Marcus, she said, voice dropping to conspiratorial whisper. We're in so much trouble. You have no idea. The debt isn't just a few thousand. How much? I asked. Stephanie took a breath. 800,000. The number hung in the air like smoke. $800,000. My son had blown through nearly $1 million of money he didn't have. If he goes to prison, Marcus, if they convict him on these charges, we lose everything, Stephanie continued, stepping closer, invading my space. The bank takes the house. They garnish his wages forever. But that's not the worst part. If he goes away, who protects us from these loan sharks? Me and Connor, we'll be on the street. Your grandson will be homeless. Marcus, is that what you want? There it was. The leverage. Connor. My 5-year-old grandson. The only innocent party in this entire equation. She was using him as a human shield. She knew I'd never let anything happen to that boy. Banking on my outdated sense of duty. She thought because I was a father, I'd sacrifice myself to clean up their mess. The terrifying thing? Part of me, the old sentimental part, almost wanted to. But then I remembered the reflection in the garage window. Remembered the cold calculation in Jason's eyes when he watched police search my truck. That wasn't fear of loan sharks. That was anticipation. He wanted me gone. I looked at Jason kneeling on my rug, pathetic heap of a man. Looked at Stephanie, eyes hard and demanding. If I kicked them out now, turned my back, I'd never know the full extent of their plan. I'd be blind. To defeat an enemy, you have to keep them within radar range. I let my shoulders slump. Let my face crumble into weary resignation. Reached out, put a hand on Jason's shoulder. 800,000, I whispered, shaking my head. My God, son. Why didn't you come to me? I was ashamed, Jason wept, grabbing my hand. Didn't want to disappoint you. I sighed, long, rattling sound. Get up. Get off the floor. Jason scrambled up, hope igniting in his eyes. I believe you, I lied. It was the hardest lie I've ever told. I believe you were scared. I believe you made a mistake. Stephanie let out a sharp exhale of relief. Thank you, Marcus. We knew you'd understand. We just need to stick together now. The lawyer says if we present a united front, explain about the threats, maybe we can get the charges reduced. We'll figure it out, I said, waving my hand tiredly. You two stay here tonight. Don't want you going back if these people are watching. Thank you, Dad, Jason said, trying to hug me. I stiffened. His touch felt like slime. Patted his back awkwardly, pulled away. Go upstairs. Take the guest room. I need to think. I watched them climb the stairs arm in arm. They looked relieved. Thought they'd won. Thought the old man bought the story, hook, line, and sinker. As soon as I heard the bedroom door click shut upstairs, the exhaustion vanished. My spine straightened. The fog in my brain cleared. I walked into the kitchen, avoiding the creaky floorboards out of habit. Didn't turn on the light. Glow from the street lamp was enough. Pulled my phone from my pocket. Didn't call the police. Police deal with facts and evidence. Right now, the evidence was messy. I needed something else. I needed dirt. I scrolled to a contact saved simply as Patterson. Ex-cop, worked with me in security consulting after I retired from Boeing. Expensive, discreet, and he hated bullies as much as I did. I typed quickly in the dark. Need full workup on my son, Jason Hartley. Financials, associates, gambling debts. Also check a woman named Stephanie Hartley. Dig deep. Need to know who they really owe. Start immediately. Money is no object. Hit send. Deleted the message. Poured myself a glass of water. Hand steady. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was a project manager, and I'd just identified a critical failure in the system. Now I had to map out the extent of the corruption. I walked quietly to the bottom of the stairs. The house is old, built in the 70s, and the heating vents carry sound if you know where to listen. There's a vent in the hallway ceiling connecting directly to the guest room ductwork. I used to listen at this spot when Jason was a teenager, checking if he was sneaking out. I stood there in the dark, holding my breath. At first, just movement, drawers opening and closing. Then Stephanie's voice. Low. Venomous. Can't believe he bought that garbage story. He's softer than I thought. He's my dad, Steph, Jason's voice replied, different now. The weeping child was gone, replaced by arrogant sneer. He's always been a pushover for the family card. We got lucky, Stephanie snapped. If the cops had looked harder, or if he hadn't moved that package. I know, Jason interrupted. But we're here now. We're in the house. That's step one. We need to accelerate the timeline, Stephanie said. The lawyer's gonna cost a fortune, and those loan sharks aren't waiting for a trial. We need access to his accounts, Jason. We need that power of attorney. I tried to frame him and it backfired, Jason hissed. What do you want me to do? Ask him nicely to sign over his life savings while I'm out on bail? No, Stephanie replied, and her voice sent a chill down my spine colder than Seattle rain. We stop trying to make him a criminal. That's too complicated. We go with plan B. We make him incompetent. What do you mean? I mean he's old, Jason. He lives alone. He's under a lot of stress. People his age get confused. They forget things. They take the wrong medication. They have accidents. Long, heavy silence. You want to gaslight him, Jason said slowly. I want to save us, Stephanie corrected. If he's declared mentally unfit, you become his guardian automatically. You get control of the estate, the house, the pension, everything. We can sell this place, pay off the debt, start over. But the doctor. I know a doctor. And I know how to mix his daily pills so he seems a little off. Just enough to worry the neighbors. Just enough for a judge to see he needs help. I stood at the bottom of those stairs, hand gripping the banister so hard the wood creaked. They weren't just greedy. They were evil. They were planning to erase my mind, steal my sanity, because they'd failed to steal my freedom. Do it, Jason said. I heard the words and felt the last thread of attachment to my son snap. It didn't break with a bang. It broke with a whisper. I walked back to my bedroom. Didn't sleep that night. Laid in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to rain. Formulated a plan. They wanted to play doctor. Wanted to mess with my reality. Fine. I'd let them. I'd be the best patient they ever had. I'd play the confused, stumbling old man until they were so confident, so arrogant, they wouldn't see the trap until it clamped shut around their necks. You want to gaslight me? I whispered to the dark room. Let's see who burns first. The war for my life didn't resume with shouting or violence. It resumed with the smell of bacon and sizzling eggs. When I walked into the kitchen the next morning, the domestic scene was so normal it was terrifying. Stephanie at the stove wearing an apron, humming softly. Jason sitting at the island, reading news on his tablet. If you looked through the window, you'd think we were the perfect, loving family recovering from a misunderstanding. But I knew better. This wasn't peace. This was stage management. Good morning, Dad, Jason said, looking up with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. How'd you sleep? Fine, I lied, moving toward the coffee pot. My hands were steady, but my mind was racing. I'd stayed up half the night researching conservatorship laws in Washington state. I knew exactly what they needed to take my life away. They needed proof I was a danger to myself. They needed a medical diagnosis. They needed a decline. Here, let me get that for you, Marcus, Stephanie said, rushing over to pour my coffee before I could lift the pot. You looked a little shaky yesterday. We don't want any accidents. I'm perfectly capable of pouring my own coffee, Stephanie. She pulled back, hands up in mock surrender. Okay. Just trying to help. No need to get agitated. She exchanged a look with Jason. A look that said, he's irritable. He's aggressive. Symptom number 1. Over the next 3 days, my house became a funhouse mirror. I've lived here 30 years. I know every creak in the floorboards. I know exactly where I put my reading glasses, my keys, my wallet. I'm an engineer. Order isn't just a preference, it's a discipline. A place for everything and everything in its place. But suddenly, the laws of physics in my home seemed to break down. It started with the television remote. I always leave it on the side table, aligned parallel with the edge of the coaster. Went to the kitchen for water. When I came back, the table was empty. I looked around. Checked the floor. Nothing. What are you looking for, Dad? Jason asked, walking in from the patio. The remote. I left it right here. Are you sure? Maybe you took it with you to the kitchen. I did not take it to the kitchen, I snapped. I walked to the kitchen anyway. Wasn't there. Checked the bathroom. Nothing. Came back to the living room, frustration rising. Jason stood up, lifted a throw pillow on the sofa. Is this it? He asked, holding up the remote. I stared at it. I hadn't sat on that side of the sofa all day. I knew I hadn't put it there. But Jason held it out with a look of concern that made my stomach turn. You probably just covered it up and didn't realize it, Dad. It happens. I took the remote, fingers brushing his. He was warm, alive, and lying. But the seed was planted. A tiny nagging question in the back of my brain, did I put it there? Did I forget? The attacks escalated. Next day, my keys. I have a brass hook by the front door. I hang my truck keys there the moment I walk in. Done this every day since 1994. I needed to go to the hardware store for a new deadbolt, a precaution I felt was necessary. Reached for the hook. It was empty. I froze. Patted my pockets. Checked the entry table. Stephanie. I called out. Have you seen my keys? She walked in holding a laundry basket. No, Marcus. Did you check the hook? Of course I checked the hook. They're not there. Well, retrace your steps. Where were you last? I was in the kitchen making a sandwich. Let's look together, she said soothingly, like talking to a toddler. We walked into the kitchen. I checked the counters, the table. Oh, Marcus, Stephanie said softly. I turned. She was standing by the refrigerator. She'd opened the door. There, sitting on the middle shelf next to a carton of milk, were my keys. The cold metal frosted with condensation. I stared at them. The logic was impossible. Why would I put my keys in the fridge? Made no sense. I didn't put them there, I whispered. Stephanie put a hand on my arm. Light touch, but heavy with implication. It's okay, Marcus. We all have moments. You were probably just grabbing mayonnaise and got confused. Nothing to be ashamed of. I pulled my arm away. I'm not confused. I didn't put them there. You moved them. Her face fell. Looked hurt. Marcus, why would I do that? Why would I hide your keys in the refrigerator? That sounds paranoid. She used the word like a weapon. Paranoid. Another symptom for the list. I grabbed the keys, stormed out to my truck. Sat in the driveway for 10 minutes just breathing. Looked at my hands. They were shaking. Not from age, but from fear. Was it possible? Was the stress, the arrest, the betrayal, the grief, was it causing my mind to fracture? That's the terrifying power of gaslighting. It uses your own worst fears against you. I fear losing my mind more than I fear death. And they knew it. I didn't go to the hardware store. Felt too unsafe to drive. Sat there and watched my own house, feeling like a stranger in my own life. This is when I realized I was fighting a war on two fronts, not just against them, but against my own doubt. Have you ever questioned your own reality? Let me know in the comments. Because what happened next pushed me to the absolute edge. The next afternoon, the campaign moved outside. I was kneeling in the front garden, weeding the flower beds, a mindless task that usually brings me peace. Living room window was open. Could hear Jason watching a football game inside. I saw my neighbor, Mrs. Chen, walking her poodle down the sidewalk. Sweet woman, but the neighborhood gossip. Tell her a secret at noon, the postman knows it by 1. Stephanie was sweeping the front porch. She waved at Mrs. Chen. Hello, Mrs. Chen. Stephanie called out, voice projected louder than necessary. Hello, dear, Mrs. Chen replied, stopping at the edge of the lawn. How is Marcus doing? I saw the police cars the other day. Looked dreadful. Stephanie sighed, loud, tragic. It's been hard. We're doing our best. You know, with his condition, things are getting unpredictable. Condition? Mrs. Chen asked, leaning in. Stephanie lowered her voice just enough to sound confidential, but loud enough for me to hear from the flower bed 10 feet away. Dementia, Stephanie said. The word hit me like a physical blow. We're trying to keep it private, but, well, that incident on the highway. He got confused. Thought he was going fishing, but he had some things in the truck he shouldn't have. Didn't even know what they were. Thought the drugs were fish bait. Poor soul. Oh my heavens. Mrs. Chen gasped. I had no idea he was that far gone. He always seemed so sharp. It comes and goes. Yesterday I found his keys in the freezer. He accuses us of stealing from him. It's heartbreaking, watching him fade like this. We're just trying to keep him safe before he hurts himself or someone else. I gripped the trowel in my hand until the metal dug into my palm. I wanted to stand up and scream. Wanted to tell Mrs. Chen this woman was a viper, a liar, a thief. But I stopped myself. If I stood up screaming, what would it look like? An angry, shouting old man. A paranoid old man. It would prove Stephanie right. It would be the scene she was trying to provoke. I stayed on my knees. Let the dirt stain my trousers. Swallowed the rage, forcing it down into the pit of my stomach where it burned like acid. I realized then I couldn't win by reacting. I had to win by observing. I had to find the glitch in their system. That evening, the atmosphere was suffocating. Jason and Stephanie were cheerful, celebrating their successful performance. Ordered pizza. Offered me a slice. I declined. Went to my room. I have a heart condition, atrial fibrillation. I take a medication called digoxin every night at 8 p.m. It regulates my heart rhythm. Without it, my heart can flutter, race, eventually fail. It's a precise drug. Too little does nothing. Too much is poison. I keep the bottle on my nightstand. I sat on the edge of my bed, the events of the last few days weighing on me. The remote, the keys, the gossip, it was a coordinated assault on my reality. I reached for the orange prescription bottle. Pushed down, twisted the safety cap. It clicked open. Poured a single pill into my hand. I stopped. Held the pill up to the bedside lamplight. Digoxin pills are white, round, small, scored down the middle. The pill in my hand was white, round, small. But the texture was wrong. Slightly chalkier. The edges weren't as sharp as pharmaceutical-grade press usually is. And the scoring line down the middle, it was faintly crooked. I poured out another pill. Then another. Lined them up on the mahogany surface. Pulled a magnifying glass from my desk drawer, tool I used for examining circuit boards. Peered at the pills. To the naked eye, they were identical to my heart medication. But under magnification, the differences were screaming. The imprint code was slightly shallower. The color had a microscopic tint of yellow that shouldn't be there. These were not my pills. My heart skipped a beat, not from the condition, but from realization. They weren't just moving my keys. They weren't just lying to neighbors. They were replacing my medication. I didn't know what these pills were. Maybe sugar pills to make my heart condition worsen, causing me to faint or get dizzy. Maybe something hallucinogenic to make me act erratic in public. Or maybe something toxic to induce a medical emergency that would land me in the hospital, giving Jason the perfect opportunity to sign emergency guardianship papers. I looked at the bottle. The label was mine. The date was correct. But the contents were a lie. I sat there in silence, staring at the little white circles of death. The fear that paralyzed me earlier in the driveway vanished. Replaced by cold, hard clarity of an engineer who'd finally found the source of the structural failure. They were trying to kill me. Or worse, break my mind so they could own my life. I swept the pills into a tissue, put them in my pocket. Took the bottle, hid it deep inside my sock drawer. Then went to my emergency travel kit in the closet, took out a spare sealed bottle of real digoxin I keep for trips. I took my actual dose. Lay down on the bed, fully dressed. Stared at the ceiling fan spinning slowly above me. You want to play games with my mind? You want to make me question reality? Fine. I'll show you reality. But you're not going to like it when the lights turn on. I closed my eyes, but I didn't sleep. I was calculating. If they tampered with the meds, they had to do it recently. They had to handle the bottle. They had to have the fake pills somewhere. Tomorrow, the house would be empty when they went to meet their lawyer. And tomorrow, the hunter becomes the hunted. I wasn't just going to find my keys in the fridge. I was going to find the factory where they were manufacturing my insanity. And I was going to burn it to the ground. The next morning, rain had stopped, leaving behind a sky the color of a fresh bruise. I walked into the living room to find my grandson, Connor, sitting on the floor surrounded by plastic building blocks. He's 5 years old, with the same unruly hair I had at his age, and eyes that used to light up when I walked into a room. Now those eyes looked up at me with wariness, a hesitation planted there by whispers he was too young to understand. I felt a physical ache in my chest. They could take my money. They could slander my name. But stealing the affection of this boy was a crime I could not forgive. I needed to get him out of this toxic atmosphere, even if just for an hour. Needed to remind him who his grandfather really was before their poison took hold completely. "Hey there, champ," I said, keeping my voice soft. Picked up a blue block from the carpet. Sun's finally peeking out. How about we grab our coats and head down to Discovery Park? Check out the lighthouse. Maybe spot a seal or two. Connor looked at the block in my hand. Then at the kitchen doorway where his mother was standing. He didn't smile. Didn't jump up and run for his sneakers like he used to. He just sat there, small and conflicted. I stood up, knees popping audibly in the quiet room. "Come on, Connor. I'll even let you buy a double scoop ice cream cone. Don't tell your dad." I reached out my hand. Connor started to reach back, little fingers uncurling. For a second, I saw the connection re-establish, the bond of blood that predated all this greed. But before our fingers could touch, Stephanie was there. She moved with the speed of a striking cobra, crossing the room and snatching Connor up by his arm. The boy yelped in surprise. She pulled him against her hip, shielding him from me as if I were contagiously ill. "No," she snapped, voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Absolutely not." I stared at her, my hand still extended in empty space. "Stephanie, it's just a walk in the park. The boy's been cooped up inside for 3 days. And you think you're capable of supervising him? You think you're in a state to be responsible for a child? I'm 72, Stephanie, not an invalid. I raised a child. I've navigated ships. I think I can handle a walk to the playground." "Oh really?" She scoffed, smoothing Connor's hair aggressively. "Like you handled the drive to the cabin? Like you handle your keys, Marcus? Let's be real. You're not well. What if you have an episode? What if you get confused and wander off, leaving Connor alone near the water? I can't take that risk. I'm his mother." I felt anger rising, hot and dangerous. Took a step forward. "I have never had an episode in my life and you know it. Stop trying to rewrite history." "I'm not rewriting anything. I'm reading the writing on the wall. You're unstable. You're erratic. And I will not let you endanger my son. She looked down at Connor, her face softening into a mask of exaggerated maternal concern. Tell Grandpa, Connor. Tell him why we have to be careful. Connor looked at me. His lower lip trembled. He buried his face in Stephanie's neck for a moment, then peeked out. Mommy says you're sick, Grandpa, he whispered. The air left the room. I stood frozen. What else did Mommy say, Connor? I asked, voice barely a rasp. Connor sniffled. Mommy says your brain is broken. She says you have to go away to the special house with the metal bars on the windows because you might hurt us. The silence that followed was deafening. I looked at Stephanie. She didn't look ashamed. She looked defiant. She'd weaponized a 5-year-old. Taken his innocence and filled it with nightmares of prisons and madmen, all to justify her greed. She was painting me as a monster to my own flesh and blood so that when they finally locked me away, Connor wouldn't cry for me. He'd be relieved. I looked at Jason. He was standing in the doorway, leaning against the frame, arms crossed. He heard every word. Heard his son say his father belonged in a cage. And he said nothing. Just looked at the floor. A coward to the bitter end. In that moment, the last ember of hope I held for my family was extinguished. I walked to the kitchen. Picked up the landline phone. Who are you calling? Jason asked. A contractor, I said. I need a new door. And I need to change the locks. Again. What I'm about to tell you next, I need you to understand, I didn't do it out of revenge. I did it out of survival. That afternoon, while they were gone to meet their lawyer, I went to work. My basement workshop looks like a cluttered mess of tools and wires to the untrained eye. To me, it's an arsenal. I didn't reach for consumer-grade nanny cams. Those are for amateurs. They have blinking lights. They need batteries. They're easily found. No. I reached for my inspection equipment. Pulled out coils of fiber optic cable and 3 high-definition endoscopic cameras, used to look inside jet engines and check for cracks in structural beams deep within walls. They're the size of a grain of rice. They're hardwired. They're invisible. I started in the living room. Dragged a stepladder to the main air return vent near the ceiling. Unscrewed the grate. Fed the cable through the ductwork, snaking it until the lens peeked out through the slats, angled perfectly to capture the entire seating area. I wired it directly into the smart home hub in the attic, masking the signal as a thermostat sensor. Next, the kitchen. The battlefield. Removed the faceplate of the electrical outlet on the kitchen island. Drilled a hole the width of a pin into the plastic casing. Mounted the second camera there. Perfect view of the stove and the countertop where Stephanie prepared my food. Finally, the dining room. I lowered the crystal chandelier, wove the third camera into the intricate metalwork, disguising the lens as just another dark rivet in the bronze. Bird's eye view of the table where we broke bread and where they broke my trust. I connected everything to a secure server on an encrypted laptop in a false bottom drawer of my workbench. Tested the feeds. The resolution was crystal clear. I could see dust motes dancing in the sunlight. I wasn't building a security system. I was building a courtroom. I was wiping drywall dust from my hands when my secure phone buzzed. Encrypted email from Patterson, my private investigator. Subject line, just one word. Urgent. I sat down on my shop stool, opened the file. I expected bad news. Expected gambling debts. Expected maxed out credit cards. What I saw made the blood drain from my face. It was a copy of a property deed. My property deed. According to the document on my screen, I'd taken out a second mortgage on my house 3 months ago, a hard money loan from a shadow lender based in Nevada, a company with ties to organized crime. The loan amount, $850,000. The interest rate was predatory. I scrolled down to the signature page. There, in black ink, was my name, Marcus Hartley. The signature was a decent forgery, shaky enough to look like mine, but firm enough to pass a quick glance. Beside it was a notary stamp from a woman I'd never met. I read Patterson's notes attached to the file. Jason didn't just borrow money from loan sharks, Marcus. He stole your house. He forged your signature to secure the loan. Took the cash and blew it on crypto futures that tanked. The lender is calling the note. They want the money or the collateral. Deadline is next Tuesday. If he doesn't pay, they foreclose. They'll kick you out on the street. I stared at the screen. The pieces fell into place with the terrifying logic of a collapsing building. This was why they were rushing. Why they needed the guardianship now. They didn't just want to control my money. They needed legal authority to sell the house immediately to pay off the sharks before the foreclosure notice hit my mailbox and alerted me. They were literally selling the roof over my head to save themselves from the consequences of their own greed. My hand curled into a fist. I wanted to smash the laptop. Wanted to drive to that lawyer's office and drag Jason out by his expensive tie. But I stopped. Anger is a variable that clouds judgment. I needed to be cold. I switched tabs on the laptop. Pulled up the recording history from the cameras I'd just installed. The system had a buffer feature that allowed me to sync with existing smart home sensors I'd hacked earlier. I wanted to see what happened this morning before I woke up. Before the pancake breakfast. I scrolled back to 7 a.m. The feed from the kitchen camera wasn't active yet, but I had audio from the Alexa device on the counter. And I had partial view from the hallway security sensor. I synced the audio. I heard the sound of a mortar and pestle, grinding, stone against stone. Rhythmic scraping. I watched the grainy footage. Stephanie was standing at the island. She wasn't making coffee. She was working with the intensity of a chemist. She had a small plastic bag of pills, the same white pills I'd found in my room. She was crushing them into fine white powder. I watched as she took the powder and dumped it into the bowl of pancake batter. Whisked it vigorously. Then I heard her voice, cheerful, bright, wakey wakey, Dad. I made your favorites. I watched the screen as she flipped the pancakes. The very pancakes I'd eaten 3 hours ago. A wave of nausea rolled over me. I had to grip the edge of the workbench to keep from falling. She wasn't just gaslighting me. She was drugging me, with a heavy sedative, maybe an antipsychotic, something to make me lethargic, confused, compliant. She was poisoning me. And she was doing it while humming a show tune. I saved the clip. Backed it up to 3 different cloud servers. This wasn't just fraud anymore. This was assault. This was attempted murder. I checked the time. They'd be back soon. I had to clean up. Had to put the mask back on. I went upstairs. Sat in my recliner. Turned on the TV to a game show. Forced my body to relax, though every nerve ending was screaming. 20 minutes later, the front door opened. They walked in looking different. There was a swagger in Jason's step that hadn't been there before. Stephanie looked smug. "Did you have a nice nap, Dad?" Jason asked, tossing his keys on the table. I blinked at him, keeping my mouth slightly open. "I watched some TV. Who won the war?" Jason laughed, cruel, dismissive sound. "The war's over, Dad. Don't worry about it." Just then, the doorbell rang. Wasn't a friend. Wasn't a neighbor. Jason exchanged a look with Stephanie. "That was fast," he said. He opened the door. A man in a cheap, ill-fitting suit stood there holding a large manila envelope. "Marcus Hartley?" the man asked, looking past Jason to where I sat. "That's him," Jason said, pointing at me. "But I can take it. I'm his son." The man handed the envelope to Jason. "Consider him served." Jason closed the door. Walked over holding the envelope like a trophy. "What's that?" I asked, letting my voice tremble. "It's for your own good, Dad," Jason said. He ripped it open. Pulled out a stack of legal documents. I knew what they were without reading them, but I read the bold text at the top anyway. Emergency ex parte order for temporary guardianship. And below that, the sworn affidavit signed by Jason and Stephanie Hartley. Petitioner alleges that Marcus Hartley is suffering from advanced dementia, exhibits violent and paranoid behavior, and poses an imminent danger to himself and others. Petitioner requests immediate control of all assets and medical decisions to prevent self-harm. They'd done it. They'd lied to a judge. Sworn under oath that I was mad. Jason looked at me, and for a second the mask slipped completely. His eyes were cold, dead things. "We have a court date on Thursday, Dad," he said softly. "But until then, I'm in charge. I'm taking your car keys. I'm taking your credit cards. And tomorrow we're going to look at some assisted living facilities. We found a nice one. Very secure." He emphasized the word secure. He meant locked. Stephanie walked over, patted my cheek. "It's better this way, Marcus. You won't have to worry about bills or house maintenance anymore. You can just rest." I sat there, clutching the armrests of my chair. I looked at the hidden camera in the vent above their heads. The hidden camera in the outlet behind them. They thought they'd just served me my death warrant. They thought the game was over. I looked down at the papers in my lap. Let a single tear roll down my cheek, not of sadness, but of performance. "Okay," I whispered. "Okay." Jason smiled. Took the papers back. Walked into the kitchen to pour himself a celebratory drink. I sat there and listened to the ice clink in his glass. "Enjoy it, son. Enjoy the victory lap. Because you have no idea you just handed the engineer the blueprints to your own demolition. You set the court date for Thursday. That gave me 4 days. 4 days to analyze the data. 4 days to process the evidence. 4 days to prepare the counterstrike." I closed my eyes, let my head loll back, pretending to doze off. But behind my eyelids, I was wide awake. The countdown had begun. And when it hit 0, I wasn't going to be the one leaving this house in handcuffs. Tuesday arrived with the violence of a sledgehammer. The rain had turned into a storm, lashing against the windows with a fury that matched the turmoil inside. I was sitting in my bedroom, door locked, staring at the monitor of my laptop. It was 2 in the morning. The house should have been asleep, but the sensors I'd installed picked up movement downstairs, pacing, endlessly pacing. Then came the sound that stopped my heart. Not a knock, but pounding, heavy, rhythmic thudding against the front oak door I'd refinished myself 10 years ago. The kind of knock that doesn't ask for permission. It demands entry. I switched the camera feed to the external security camera wired into the porch light. 2 men stood there, soaking wet, wearing dark raincoats. One held a tire iron loosely in his hand, tapping it against his thigh. They didn't look like bankers. Didn't look like process servers. They looked like executioners. I watched on my screen as Jason opened the door. Didn't even unlatch the chain. Turned up the audio gain on the living room microphone. "Time's up, Jason," the man with the tire iron said, voice low and gravelly, competing with the wind. "The boss is tired of excuses." "I don't have it yet," Jason's voice cracked. "I told you, Thursday. I get the court order on Thursday. Then I can sell the house. I just need 48 hours. You don't have 48 hours. You have until tonight. Midnight. Or we take the collateral. And we aren't talking about the house anymore. We're talking about knees. We're talking about that pretty wife of yours." Jason slammed the door, locked it. I watched him lean his back against the wood, sliding down until he hit the floor. Shaking. Hyperventilating. Stephanie ran into the frame from the kitchen. She wasn't scared. She was furious. "Who was it?" she hissed, pulling Jason to his feet. "They're going to kill me, Steph. They're going to kill us all. They want the money by midnight." Stephanie slapped him. The sound echoed through the microphone on my desk. "Pull yourself together," she ordered. "Crying doesn't pay debts. Think. We need a solution." "We can't wait for the court," Jason stammered. "The judge won't sign the order until the hearing Thursday. That's 2 days too late. We're dead by then." I leaned closer to my monitor. I needed to hear this. "There's another way," Stephanie said, voice dropping to a whisper. But the high-quality audio pickup caught every syllable. "What way?" "If he dies, Jason." The silence that followed was heavier than the storm outside. "If he dies before Thursday, the emergency guardianship doesn't matter. You're the sole heir. The will's already probated from when Catherine died. The house becomes yours instantly. We can show the deed to the guys outside. We can get a bridge loan against the inheritance within hours." Jason looked at her, horrified but listening. "You mean, kill him?" "I can't kill my dad, Stephanie. I can't just shoot him." "Not shoot him, you idiot. That's messy. That brings police. I'm talking about an accident. Look at him. He's confused. He's medicated. He thinks his dead brother is alive. He wanders around at night." She walked over to the bottom of the staircase, looked up. The camera angle caught the terrifying glint in her eyes. "These stairs are steep, Jason. Hardwood. If a confused old man were to slip in the middle of the night, if he were to fall, who would question it? The medical examiner already knows he has a heart condition. The neighbors know he has dementia. It's a tragedy, Jason. Not a crime." I sat in my chair, blood turning to ice. I'd built those stairs. I'd sanded that wood. And now the woman I'd welcomed into my family was calculating the velocity required to break my neck on them. Brandon didn't say no. That was the dagger in my heart. He didn't scream at her. Didn't throw her out. He just looked at the stairs. Looked at his watch. Then he nodded slowly. "How do we do it?" "Tonight," Stephanie said. "We wait until he comes out for water. Or we make a noise to lure him out. Then one push. Just one push, Jason. And we're free." I turned off the monitor. Didn't need to see anymore. I'd seen the face of evil, and it wore my daughter-in-law's makeup. I sat in the dark, breath coming in shallow gasps. I was an engineer. I dealt with physics, with load-bearing capacities, with certainty. But this was chaos. I was trapped in a house with 2 people who planned to murder me within the next few hours. I couldn't barricade the door, that would signal I knew. They'd just break it down, claim I was having a violent episode, finish the job. I couldn't run. I was 72 and there were killers watching the house from the street. I needed air support. I opened my secure laptop. Didn't email Patterson this time. Opened a secure VoIP application. Dialed a number Patterson had given me after the highway incident. The phone rang twice. "Agent Collins," a voice answered, sharp, alert. "This is Marcus Hartley. We spoke briefly after the traffic stop. You gave my private investigator this number." "Mr. Hartley," Collins said, tone shifting instantly. Are you safe? No. I'm inside the house. My son and his wife are downstairs planning to stage a fatal accident for me tonight. They're desperate. The loan sharks are at the door. Listen to me closely, Marcus. We've been monitoring the situation. The gun your son tried to plant on you matches ballistics from a cartel execution in Portland 3 months ago. The men squeezing your son aren't just loan sharks. They're part of a laundering ring we've been building a case against for 2 years. We have a surveillance team down the street, but we were waiting for the money exchange to move in. You can't wait, I said. They're going to kill me tonight to get the inheritance. We're moving in, Collins said. I'm sending a tactical team. No, I interrupted. If you come in now, blowing the doors off, Jason claims he was under duress. Claims he's a victim. He gets a plea deal. And Stephanie, she walks away. She's smart. She hasn't touched the money directly. What are you suggesting? I want them all. I want the people at the door. I want my son. And I want the woman who poisoned my pancakes. I want them to think they've won. I want them to sign the confession with their own actions. Marcus, that's too dangerous. I'm an engineer, Agent Collins. I've calculated the risk. I need you to hold back. Give me 1 hour. When the ambulance arrives, that's your signal. The ambulance? You're hurt? Not yet, I said. But I'm about to be. I hung up before he could argue. I had a plan. It was risky. Required me to act against every survival instinct I had. If they wanted a frail, dying old man, I'd give them one. I'd give them a victim so helpless that murdering him would seem redundant. I went to the bathroom. Looked at myself in the mirror. I needed to sell this. Took out my dentures, something I rarely did, even in front of Catherine. My face collapsed inward, looking suddenly 10 years older. Messed up my hair. Unbuttoned my pajama top so it hung loose and disheveled. Then I practiced. Sat on the edge of the tub, let the left side of my face go slack. Let my eye droop. Dragged my left leg. I'd seen my own father suffer a stroke. I knew the signs, the terrifying loss of control, the inability to form words. If I had a massive stroke, if I was paralyzed, I was no longer a threat. I was a vegetable. And more importantly, if I was dying naturally, pushing me down the stairs became unnecessary risk. Why commit murder when nature's doing the work for you? They'd wait. They'd let me die in bed to avoid autopsy questions. I took a deep breath. This was the performance of my life. I opened the bedroom door. The hallway was dark. I heard them whispering downstairs. They were waiting. I stepped out. Let my foot drag heavily on the floorboards. Scrape. Scrape. Let out a low, guttural moan, not a scream, a sound of confusion and distress. Moved to the top of the stairs. I saw Jason appear at the bottom. He looked terrified. Looked ready to run up and push me. I gripped the banister. Swayed. Then I let my legs buckle. I didn't throw myself down the stairs, that would be suicide. I collapsed onto the landing at the top of the stairs. Hit the floor hard. My shoulder took the impact, sending a jolt of real pain through my arm. I sprawled there, half on carpet, half on wood. Stared down at them with wide, terrified eyes. Tried to speak, but only let out a slur of nonsense syllables. Guh, no. Stephanie appeared beside Jason. Stared up at me. What happened? She whispered. Did he fall? No, Jason said, staring at my slack face. Look at him. He's having a stroke. I twitched my hand. Let a line of saliva run from the corner of my mouth. Tried to lift my head and failed, letting it thud back against the floor. Is he dead? Stephanie asked, taking a step up. Jason ran up the stairs. Knelt beside me. Checked my pulse. He's alive. But barely. His pulse is racing. He can't move his left side. I looked at Jason. Put every ounce of fear and betrayal I felt into that look, but kept my face frozen in the mask of paralysis. Call 911, Jason said, reaching for his phone. Stephanie grabbed his wrist. Her grip was iron. No, she hissed. What are you talking about? Jason yelled. He's dying. Exactly, Stephanie said. Look at him, Jason. He's done. Even if he survives, he's a vegetable. He can't speak. He can't testify. He can't stop us. But if we call 911 now, they might save him. They might stabilize him. And then we're back to square one, waiting for guardianship while the sharks break our legs. She looked down at me. I stared back, unblinking, trapping the scream in my throat. Let nature take its course, Jason. We put him in bed. We make him comfortable. And we wait. When he passes in an hour, maybe 2, we call the doctor. We say he passed in his sleep. No stares, no bruises, no questions. Jason looked at me. Looked at the father who taught him to fish, who paid for his college, who bailed him out of jail. He looked at me lying helpless on the floor. And he made his choice. He stood up. Okay. Help me carry him to the bed, Stephanie said. They lifted me, clumsy and painful. Jason took my shoulders. Stephanie took my feet. They carried me into the bedroom like a sack of unwanted laundry. Dropped me onto the mattress. Stephanie pulled the duvet up to my chin. Leaned close to my face. You had a good run, Marcus, she whispered. Just let go. It's better for everyone. They turned off the light. Left the door slightly ajar. I heard them go back downstairs. Heard the clink of a bottle. They were celebrating. They were toasting to my imminent death. I lay in the dark, my body screaming in pain, my heart hammering. I tested my fingers under the blanket. They moved. I wiggled my toes. They moved. I was not dying. I was waiting. I counted the minutes in my head. 10, 20, 30. I needed to time this perfectly. Needed the FBI in position, but I also needed one more piece of evidence. I knew the loan sharks were coming back at midnight. That was in 15 minutes. I was the bait in the trap. The honeypot. And the bears were about to walk right in. 15 minutes later, the pounding came again. Heavier this time. Angrier. I heard Jason answer the door. We told you midnight, the voice growled. Where's our money? I'm getting it. I swear. My father, he had a stroke. He's dying upstairs right now. As soon as he's gone, the house is mine. I can get you a bridge loan tonight. You think we're stupid? You think we're gonna wait for you to inherit? We want collateral. Now. Please, just a few more hours. No more hours. Either you give us the deed to this house right now, signed over to us until you pay, or we start breaking things. Starting with your wife. Stephanie's scream cut through the house. That was my cue. I reached under my pillow for the phone I'd hidden there. Dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? Help, I gasped, making my voice weak and slurred. 2 men, breaking in, my son, they're going to kill us. I gave the address and dropped the phone, left the line open so they could hear everything. Then I pressed the button on the small remote I'd been clutching. Every camera in the house activated. Every recording started uploading to the cloud in real time. Downstairs, chaos erupted. The front door exploded inward, not from the loan sharks, but from the FBI tactical team. FBI. Federal agents. Nobody move. Glass shattered in the kitchen as the back door was breached. Heavy boots thundered through the house. Hands up. Down on the ground. Down on the ground. I heard Stephanie screaming. Jason shouting. The loan sharks yelling threats. Then I heard Agent Collins' voice, calm and commanding. Jason Hartley, Stephanie Hartley, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, elder abuse, fraud, and a whole list of other charges. You have the right to remain silent? I lay there in my bed, tears streaming down my face, real ones this time. Not tears of fear. Tears of relief. Heavy footsteps on the stairs. Agent Collins appeared in my doorway with a paramedic team. Mr. Hartley, are you injured? I slowly sat up. Let the paralysis act drop completely. Just my shoulder from the fall, I said in my normal voice. And my pride for having raised such a monster. Collins smiled, a sad, understanding smile. We got them all, Marcus. The loan sharks, your son, his wife. And we got them on tape trying to let you die. That's attempted murder. Conspiracy to commit murder. Plus the financial crimes, the forged documents, the drugs from the highway stop. They're looking at decades. And my grandson? Already with Child Protective Services. Your sister-in-law is on her way to pick him up. I nodded, feeling the weight of the world lift slightly. Can I see them? I asked. Just once. Before they're taken away. Collins hesitated, then nodded. They helped me downstairs. The living room was full of agents. The loan sharks were face down on the floor in handcuffs. And there, by the door, also in handcuffs, were Jason and Stephanie. Jason looked at me, eyes wide with shock and betrayal. You were faking? The whole time? I walked over to him slowly, leaning on my cane, the real one this time, because my shoulder genuinely hurt. I looked him in the eye. You want to know the difference between you and me, son? I said quietly. I taught you to build. To create. To solve problems. But you only learned to take. To steal. To destroy. You saw my life's work not as something to honor, but as something to harvest. Tears streamed down his face. Dad, please. I don't have a son, I said, my voice breaking. My son died the moment he decided his father's life was worth less than his debt. You're just the man who wore his face. I turned to Agent Collins. Get them out of my house. As they dragged Jason and Stephanie toward the police cars, Stephanie was still screaming, not about her son, not about her freedom. About her assets. I stood on my porch in the rain, watching the flashing lights disappear down the street. Mrs. Chen came out from her house, umbrella in hand. "Marcus? Are you all right? What happened?" I looked at her, this woman who'd believed the lies about my dementia. "I'm fine, Mrs. Chen. Just taking out the trash. Long overdue. Tell me in the comments, would you have been able to do what I did? Would you have had the strength to take down your own family to save yourself? And if you've dealt with something similar, share your story. You're not alone. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life." The trial came swiftly. The evidence was overwhelming. My video recordings. The audio of them planning my murder. The forged documents. The poisoned medication. Jason was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison. Stephanie got 15. The loan sharks got even longer. I sold the house, couldn't live there anymore. Too many ghosts. Bought a 45-foot motor coach, a rolling palace with heated floors and a king-sized bed. Cost $300,000. Jason would have hated it. Would have seen it as a waste of his inheritance. I see it as a life raft. I'm writing this from a parking spot overlooking the Pacific Ocean, somewhere along Highway 101 in Oregon. The sun is setting, painting the water in shades of gold and fire, colors no camera can truly capture. I have a glass of wine in my hand and the sound of waves in my ears. I'm alone. But for the first time in years, I'm not lonely. Loneliness is living in a house full of people who want you dead. Solitude is watching the sunset knowing you're safe. My phone buzzes on the dashboard. It's my daily appointment. I accept the video call. The screen fills with the face of Connor. He looks different. Rosier cheeks. The shadows under his eyes are gone. He's holding up a drawing of a fish, crude scribbling of green and blue crayon. "Look, Grandpa," he shouts. "I drew the big one. The one we're gonna catch." I smile, and it feels genuine. "That's a beauty, champ. Is that a trout or a shark?" "It's a shark. But we're gonna catch it because we have the best boat." I laugh. My sister-in-law Sarah leans into frame. She's Catherine's younger sister, a kind woman who never had children of her own and has welcomed Connor with open arms. "He misses you, Marcus. When are you coming through?" I look at the map on my GPS about 2 days out. Tell him to get his fishing pole ready. I found a spot where the bass are biting. Connor cheers and waves goodbye. I end the call and sit back in the captain's chair. I look at the empty passenger seat. It should feel sad, empty like that. But it doesn't. It's peaceful. People love to say, blood is thicker than water, at funerals and weddings. It's meant to enforce loyalty, to make you tolerate abuse just because you share DNA. But they forget that blood can become infected. Blood can carry disease. Blood can clot and stop your heart. Sometimes water, clear, fresh, flowing water, is exactly what you need to wash away the toxicity. I found my water. I found it in truth. Found it in the courage to stand up to my own flesh and blood to protect my dignity and my life. I lost a son. That's a wound that will never fully heal. There are nights I wake up reaching for a phone to call him before I remember he's in a cell in Leavenworth. But I gained something else. I gained a grandson who will grow up knowing that love is an action, not a transaction. And I gained myself. I am Marcus Hartley. I am not a victim. I am not a senile old man. I am a survivor. And most importantly, I'm still here. I start the engine. The diesel hums, low, powerful vibration that shakes the floorboards. I release the parking brake. The road ahead is winding and long, and I don't know exactly where it ends. But I know I'm driving it on my own terms. If you've listened to my story, if you've felt the anger and the relief, then I have one request. Don't ignore the red flags in your own life. Don't let family be an excuse for abuse. Trust your gut. Check the reflections in the window. And never, ever underestimate what you're capable of when you're pushed to the edge. I'll see you on the road. Drive safe.